Welcome back to What a Disaster. My name is Arla Smith. I'm the Disaster Communications Manager here with Legal Aid Services of Oklahoma for the disaster team. With me today, I have Jessica Fouch and Isaac Morris. They are our trained disaster staff attorneys who help respond to all civil legal issues that happen after a disaster. Legal Aid Services is a nonprofit 501c3, which helps low-income individuals under 200% poverty with civil legal issues. So if you end up having any civil legal issues after a disaster or any of the topics that we talk about, please let us know. We have more information on our website, which is www.oklahomadisasterlegalhelp.org, or you can call us through our application, our disaster hotline, which is 888-602-8494. Today, we're going to talk about disaster recovery and kind of give you a rundown of where the disaster recovery would be at. Is usually what happens is you kind of prepare for a disaster. Then what happens is a disaster hits. Once a disaster hits, you're going to look at the short-term recovery, which is what we're going to start off talking about, and that's going to move into long-term recovery. So short-term recovery would be like seeking a shelter after a disaster hits, finding trusted nonprofits within your area that have helped to respond to a disaster, which is more like the American Red Cross, the Salvation Army. You might find the Oklahoma Baptist come in to help with feeding for those who don't have any access to food. You'll see other nonprofits like Catholic Charities, us for legal aid come in to help with legal issues that happen immediately after a disaster. Recovering Oklahomans after a disaster, Oklahoma Indian Legal Services, and other Oklahoma voluntary organizations active in disaster nonprofit organizations. So I'm going to go ahead and let Jessica and Isaac talk to you about a little bit of more disaster recovery.
Thank you, Arla. Glad to be back. It's a great time together. Talk a little bit about short-term recovery, as Arla was mentioning, kind of diving deeper in. It's I always kind of break it down to food, shelter, clothing. That's kind of your immediate needs right after a disaster event, what you're thinking about. What are you going to wear the next couple of days? Where are you going to sleep? What food you're going to eat to sustain yourself. And like you said, those organizations, there are a lot of organizations that will do feeding right after. They'll set up temporary shelters, provide those kind of immediate needs right after. Once you have those needs met, then you kind of start thinking about those long-term needs,
Right.
long-term shelter and food and clothes that's kind of the short-term immediate things you think about. Boots on the ground, as we call them, those are the organizations, Salvation Army, Red Cross, Catholic Charities that do those kind of immediate needs.
Right. They'll kind of handle the immediate needs, and sometimes even some of them give you a little bit of funding to get into the recovery part.
Good point.
But I mean, and I think we discussed that a lot in kind of our last episode, that immediate right after recovery, short-term recovery. So I think maybe we'll focus a little bit on, so we're safe, we're to our location, what happens next? We're all safe, we've got clothes, we're fed, we've got a roof for the short term.
Yep.
I think that's when we start getting into going back to those documents that we've talked about. Our insurance, what coverage do we have? What financial resources?
Photos and pictures of damage.
Right. And so with that recovery process, you're going to do your insurance claims, which, I mean, you're going to want to know your coverages. Very important. Look at your policy. You want to know your policy and what you should be entitled to before you call the insurance company. You want to be prepared to advocate for yourself. I mean, we can absolutely get involved at this point and help guide people through this process. Those photos and videos that we, told you and beat the dead horse of take the video. Now's when you need the video. So let's hope you did your homework. Otherwise, you're going to be left, especially when it comes to personal property recovery. And there at National VOAD, there was this app that somebody is creating this was unbelievable. You can actually take a photo and it will account via AI for everything you've got in that room, down to the pins, down to the things in your doors. It was actually pretty incredible. I don't think it's live yet, but when it goes live, they gave us a demonstration and it was really cool. So, I mean, But without the video and the photos, you wouldn't be able to use this AI technology, right? So again, getting back to, if you have that, it's going to help your recovery process with your insurance policy. Your insurance, when you are doing that, they are not going to pay you out for something you don't tell them you have.
Right. Yeah,
Well,
important to list everything, all the stuff that's been damaged, as well as your needs, because some policies have, the um, additional
Hotels,
living expenses.
yeah,
Yeah, they'll pay for that.
absolutely,
Um,
absolutely. If you're paying for homeowners insurance post-disaster, you should be using every resource at their behest. I mean, using short-term housing. A lot of insurance companies offer short-term rentals. Some of them can be um,
Airbnbs have been,
furniture, thank
yeah,
you, yeah.
yes, yeah,
Airbnb,
they've
actually,
been doing,
post-disaster, they've had to where they've offered free Airbnbs through 211, I
yes.
believe, was how that
wow,
you could get that. So, going back to
yeah,
that 211 resource, I think that we had mentioned last time,
yeah.
211, if you have any questions, and call us, but if you don't call us, 211 can get you to resources. Absolutely.
There's a lot of different resources. So you have heartlanddisasterlegalhelp.org, which is it does most of your heartland areas. So it has more than just Oklahoma, which is a good resource to know if you're surrounding Oklahoma, like Kansas, Arkansas, Texas borders. And so that's one. And then also you have ladrc.org, Legal Aid Disaster Recovery Center.org. They actually will be able to help and guide you to more resources and information available for recovery and just disasters in general. But then you have to also kind of be wary of some of these sites that you might find scams, contractors, things like that. So you want to make sure that if you're going to go to a site, make sure it is a .org, .net, or .gov for information. That's really important to know.
Yeah, it's a great reminder. It makes me think that that's the importance of a disaster recovery center.
Yes.
Is it's a one-stop shop
Oh,
of
yeah.
organizations that have been vetted, that are trusted in the community, that are there for your best interest, that do this kind of work frequently and that want to help survivors.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a place those will be if they're set up in a local community, they'll set up at a place that is known, church, school, something of
Right.
that nature. And it's gonna they're gonna be organizations that are giving out money,
Right.
manpower,
I mean, if
tools,
you are
anything
a
to kind of
disaster
right,
survivor, it does not make sense not to go.
right,
Yeah, I mean,
right,
you absolutely
yeah,
should. And even if you have
mhm,
insurance, there are immediate needs that your insurance is going to take a little bit of a
yeah,
process. There's, immediate resources available at those marks,
yeah,
DRCs. Another thing we were talking about insurance recovery, um, your mortgage. One thing is you also want to contact your mortgage company. Whether you have, I mean, you should have insurance if you have a mortgage, but either way, you're going to want to contact your mortgage company because they're most likely going to be on your insurance check. So you need to start that communication from the get go.
right.
And also, sometimes they will help you deal with the contractors sometimes also.
Well, and if you do have a majorly declared disaster, which has been or a presidentially declared disaster, which is where FEMA might get involved, and then the Small Business Administration, they may end up being at those disaster recovery centers as well. But even if you have insurance, still apply for FEMA because what your insurance doesn't cover, FEMA may be able to help you with, or the Small Business Administration might be able to help you with for a small
Well,
loan.
and even more so FEMA, um, we're not talking about FEMA too much because, I mean, it's very unclear right now exactly everything that's going on. But I will say that with their changes they made, I think it was 2025, don't quote me on that, but there is now a $750 generally payout if you are a survivor, whether you have insurance or not. That's
Right.
just kind of you have got to have immediate needs. You were just hit by a tornado. here's $750 for food, clothing, whatever. So there is, even if you have insurance applying for those services, you might be entitled to some help,
Mhm.
whether you have
Yeah.
insurance or not. So and let's say, like you say, your insurance, let's say you're woefully underinsured, you know, FEMA's less likely to help you if you have insurance, right? But if you are very underinsured and you can show that, you might you might get some
Right.
assistance at that point.
Or even if you don't have flood insurance and you've been flooded, that would
Oh,
count as something that FEMA could help with as well.
oh, well, absolutely. If you've been flooded, that's kind of your first line of recovery because most insurance policies don't actually cover flood. So flood, earthquake, that those are things, and I think we talked about this in one episode already, but know your insurance policy, know what it covers, know the perils that it covers,
Right.
meaning it's not going to cover a flood, it's not going to cover an earthquake, and I can tell you that right off the outset about your homeowner's insurance without looking at your policy.
And just be careful. Make sure you keep your receipts. Make sure you keep anything you've
Yes.
spent on making sure you've mitigate your damage. Keep your receipts. Keep your
Very good.
contracts. Keep pictures of anything you've done, because you don't want to end up with a recoupment at the end. And FEMA will go back and recoup if you've been given the same
Oh, yeah.
benefits twice. So,
Right.
um,
And for your insurance,
right.
too.
We
Right.
do have very well written tip sheets on oklahomadisasterlegalhelp.org that talk about what FEMA can do after a disaster and preventing FEMA recoupment. So go on there, check out those tip sheets for more information.
I
Yeah.
think go ahead.
I was gonna say the biggest thing on FEMA is to spend the money for which it was earmarked. If you get funds to repair, personal property,
Oh, boy.
replace the personal property. Don't spend it on, you know, entertainment
Yes.
of any nature. So yeah,
Yes.
spend it on, if they earmarked it for this, you spend it on that. Have a receipt to show that you did. So if they come back, you can protect yourself.
Absolutely, because if there's anything I know, the federal government's gonna get their money.
Right.
And make sure you keep that information for 5 to 7 years
Yes.
just to be
Yeah.
safe.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
it could come back year 4 and you're like, oh, I don't have those. Well, they're going to want those. So
Yeah.
just keep a copy of them, download them onto a drive, upload them into the cloud, something just to make sure you have a spot where it's all kept together.
I mean, and expanding on that, like your insurance coverage will sometimes pay for food benefits. Like, let's say you're displaced, not, on top of your housing. Now, a lot of them scam around it. So I will say that food coverage on your insurance policy is sometimes like pulling teeth to get them to, because they will always find a way to deny it. But if you save your receipts, you're more likely to get some kind of assistance on your out-of-pocket expenses, food, toiletries, things like that. Again, hotel coverage, those kind of things, look at your insurance policy because they should be providing something like that. Um, OFA is an agency, Oklahoma Housing Finance Agency. We refer people to them often because they have post-disaster, rental resources all the way to mortgage assistance type resources.
Right.
So OFA, and that's Oklahoma Housing Finance Agency, that is a great resource post-disaster too.
You can find those at the disaster recovery centers too. Whenever we set up, they're
Yes.
usually set up there with us. So a
Correct.
very important agency.
Yes, and it's so important to like Jessica said earlier about contacting your mortgage company. So you start the discussion. So if you do get behind in the disaster
Right.
process or recovery process, get behind your payment, you're in communication with your mortgage company. You can work on how to remedy this. And if you're too far behind or you don't have financially an option to repay it or make your payments, then that's when OFA can help with mortgage assistance.
Yes.
Because we don't want you to get to foreclosure,
Right.
later down the
Right.
road, and because then that puts you in a tougher spot. So it's
Absolutely.
going to be proactive to start the communication
Yes.
beginning.
Absolutely. CYA on that. I mean, really, people, across the board, mortgage companies, insurance companies, landlords, anybody you're dealing with is going to be more likely to help you if you
Communicate.
contact them and
Right.
communicate early. You don't want to wait until it's last minute. So early communication with any of these people that you're having,
Right.
difficulties making payments, etc. Early communication is, I think, important.
And something else I think I want to mention is I think we've been kind of talking about homeowners. We've been assuming homeowners,
Right.
homeowners insurance, calling your mortgage company. But if you are a renter, there are still resources available to you. Of course, you would contact your landlord. If you have renters
Right.
insurance, you would file a claim with your renters insurance company. FEMA can help with
Right.
renters with personal property or damage to a vehicle.
Right.
There is still help for renters. I always want to let people let folks know
Right.
that because I
Right.
think a lot of times there is an assumption of homeowners, and there's help for them, but there's help for renters as well.
Right.
Um,
And the
and
landlord's required to do certain things too to make sure he's repaired the home and things like that as
right,
well. But
right,
you're responsible as a renter to make sure you have certain requirements. And we do
yeah,
have more information on that as well.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that there's a pretty heavy case law and um, legal analysis on what landlords and renters' duties are. But yes, I mean, there are certainly duties that both renters and landlords are to have under Oklahoma law.
Yeah. And then, like, if you have a rent to own contract, that's kind of something that's common in Oklahoma, but not so great for some people who are doing those. So that's something that, if you're in one of those contracts, make sure you reach out to an attorney, talk to them about that contract because they're going to be able to guide you with your best options. Also, if you're in foreclosure on any of it, too, make sure you reach out to an attorney because they may be able to help you get certain, loan modifications, things like that, to be able to fix the foreclosure issue before it gets too far.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that is a big part of kind of that. Now, I will say before we close, when we're talking about this, mid to long term recovery, there's also, groups and organizations, long term recovery groups that, we can get you to um, as resources. There are groups that come in and take donations and try and help people recover post disaster. But usually that's looking kind of after your insurance recovery, after that initial FEMA. And then we get into, I feel like, that long term recovery group where I mean, I've seen amazing recovery happen in these groups of people coming in, people that were very underinsured or uninsured
right,
getting. I mean, so if you are past that, you're past the insurance, insurance is tapped out and there's still a need, we still can try and find resources. So, I mean, really contact us at any time post disaster. If you're ever in need, reach out to the organizations, Catholic Charities. I mean, any of these people that provide a longer term type disaster solution.
And following back up to 211, 211 will guide you to whatever information that you need. So if you're calling because you need funds to help with repairs, they're going to guide you to an organization that can help find that fund. If you need help with getting another place to live, they're going to guide you to resources to where it'll help find housing or temporary housing. And especially like what we were talking about earlier, where they do sometimes Airbnb will donate homes to be able to have survivors stay in. So there are just different resources available. Any of the resources can be found again on oklahomadisasterlegalhelp.org. You can also go to the Legal Aid Disaster Resource Center, which is ladrc.org. And then you have heartlanddisasterlegalhelp.org as well. You can also, if you have issues with insurance, contact the Oklahoma Insurance Department. You can check into more information and more recovery tips from ready.gov. They have information for before and after a disaster. So there's multiple agencies available to be able to help you. Again, we have all kinds of tip sheets available online as well. And then if you ever need to talk to us, you can always call our disaster hotline at 888-602-8494.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.